"Why are you so cold?" Megan asked, standing in our kitchen doorway with that familiar look of disgust plastered across her perfectly contoured face. I didn't look up from my coffee. "Practicing for when you're gone." The silence that followed was worth every uncomfortable second. Megan Warren, my wife of 12 years, social media consultant extraordinaire, and the woman who'd spent the last 5 years systematically destroying my self-esteem, actually had nothing to say for once. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Alex Warren, 38 years old, district manager for a chain of mid-tier restaurants in Cleveland. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps food on our table. Megan never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was still just a waiter in a suit, as she'd put it during her last wine-fueled rant about my lack of ambition. "You can't be serious," she finally managed, her voice climbing that familiar octave that meant I was about to get the full performance. "After everything I've done for this marriage, for this family..." "Everything you've done?" I set down my mug and finally looked at her. Or really looked at her. The yoga pants that cost more than my monthly car payment. The highlights that required a 2-hour appointment every 6 weeks. The fake nails that clicked against everything like tiny weapons. Like what, exactly? Posting gym selfies? Telling your book club friends that I'm adequate in bed but lacking in other areas? Oh, wait, I forgot. You also told them I have the personality of lukewarm soup. Her face went white, then red. You were eavesdropping on private conversations? Hard not to when you're talking on speakerphone in the next room. I stood up, suddenly tired of this dance we'd been doing for years. Face it, Megan. You've been checked out of this marriage longer than I have. I'm just the first one to say it out loud. She opened her mouth, closed it, then stormed out. A few minutes later, I heard her BMW screech out of the driveway, probably heading to the gym where she spent most of her waking hours these days. My phone buzzed, a text from my best friend Richard Conrad. "Halloween party this Saturday. You and the Ice Queen coming?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "We'll be there." What I didn't know then was that Richard's Halloween party would be the night everything changed. The night the masks came off, literally and figuratively. The rest of the week passed in our usual pattern of cold politeness. Megan would disappear to the gym every morning at 6, come home sweaty and energized in a way she never was around me anymore, then spend the afternoon working on her laptop, which mostly involved posting inspirational quotes over stock photos and arguing with other influencers in comment sections. "Did you pick up your costume?" she asked Thursday night, not looking up from her phone. "Yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean thing." I'd grabbed it last minute from a Halloween store, complete with plastic sword and fake beard. "Try to make an effort this time," she said, still scrolling. "Maybe then someone will look at you twice." There it was again, the casual cruelty that had become her specialty. Death by 1,000 cuts, each one small enough to seem petty if I complained about it. "I'll do my best to live up to your standards," I said. She finally looked up, suspicious of my tone, but I was already heading upstairs. Saturday arrived gray and cold, typical October weather in Ohio. Richard and Nikki lived in one of those McMansions in the suburbs, complete with a 3-car garage and a kitchen bigger than our entire first apartment. Richard worked in insurance and had the kind of personality that made him everyone's confidant. He knew all the neighborhood gossip and wasn't shy about sharing it. "Alex!" Richard grabbed me in a bear hug the moment I walked through the door. He was dressed as a vampire, complete with cape and fake fangs. "And the lovely Megan," he added, his tone noticeably cooler as he air-kissed my wife's cheek. Richard had never liked Megan, not since the Christmas party 3 years ago when she'd gotten drunk and loudly criticized his wife's cooking in front of half their friends. He was too polite to say anything directly, but I caught his eye rolls and knowing looks. The party was already in full swing. The usual crowd from the neighborhood, plus some of Richard's co-workers and a handful of gym people that Megan had insisted on inviting. I recognized most of them, the hardcore fitness crowd that treated their bodies like temples and everyone else like heathens. "Alex, you remember Dominic Reyes," Megan said, appearing at my elbow with a man I definitely remembered, though I wished I didn't. Dominic was everything I wasn't. 6'2", muscles that strained against his tight Captain America costume, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that somehow looked rugged instead of ridiculous. He worked as a supervisor at one of the factories outside town, spent his free time at the gym, and had the kind of easy confidence that came from never doubting your place in the world. "Hey, man," Dominic said, extending a hand that engulfed mine. "Great party." "Yeah, Richard always goes all out," I replied, trying to match his grip without making it obvious. Dominic's been helping me with my training program, Megan said, and something in her voice made me look at her more closely. There was a flush in her cheeks that wasn't from the wine, and she was standing just a little too close to him. That's nice, I said. She's been making incredible progress, Dominic added, his eyes lingering on Megan in a way that made my jaw clench. Really dedicated to pushing her limits. I bet she is, I thought. The conversation continued for a few more minutes, full of inside jokes about gym routines and protein supplements and other people I didn't know. I felt like a third wheel at my own wife's flirtation session. I'm going to grab another beer, I announced, but neither of them seemed to hear me. In the kitchen, I found Nikki Conrad arranging a tray of appetizers. She was dressed as a witch, complete with pointed hat and green face paint, but her smile was as warm as always. Having fun? She asked, though something in her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Oh, you know, living the dream. She glanced toward the living room, where Megan's laugh rang out above the music. Richard mentioned you and Megan have been having some difficulties. Did he now? I took a long pull from my beer. What else did Richard mention? Nikki hesitated, then leaned closer. Alex, I like you. You're a good guy, and you deserve better than... She stopped herself, shaking her head. Never mind. It's not my place. But maybe you should keep your eyes open tonight. That's all. Before I could ask what she meant, Megan appeared in the doorway. There you are, she said, though she was looking at Nikki, not me. Dominic was telling the funniest story about his workout partner. You have to hear this. I followed her back to the living room, where Dominic was holding court with a group of admirers. The story involved someone falling off a treadmill, and everyone laughed at the appropriate moments, but I found myself watching the way Megan looked at him, the way she touched his arm when she laughed, the way he looked back at her. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Check your wife's phone. She left it on the counter. Screen still unlocked. I looked around, trying to figure out who had sent it, but everyone seemed absorbed in Dominic's performance. I slipped back into the kitchen and found Megan's phone exactly where the text said it would be. The screen showed her message thread with someone named D, obviously Dominic. I scrolled up, my stomach sinking with each message. Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear the blue dress. Already thinking about later. R will never suspect. You looked incredible at the gym today. Had to take a cold shower after. And then, sent just an hour ago, a photo that made my blood run cold. Dominic, shirtless in what looked like Richard's guest bathroom, with a message that left no room for interpretation. Ready for round 2. My hands shook as I screenshot the conversation and sent it to my own phone. Then I deleted the evidence of my snooping and put Megan's phone back where I'd found it. The rest of the party passed in a blur. I smiled when I was supposed to smile, laughed when I was supposed to laugh, and made small talk with people whose names I forgot the moment they walked away. All the while, I watched my wife and her lover pretend they were just friends, just workout partners, just two people who happened to find each other hilarious. Around midnight, I saw them slip away from the main party. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. The guest bedroom door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. Low, intimate, urgent. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard enough to confirm what I already knew. We have to be careful, Megan was saying. Alex is already suspicious. So leave him, Dominic replied. You said yourself he's a loser. No ambition, no passion, no. It's not that simple. There's the house, the finances, his restaurant connections. I need to do this right. What about Susie? She's starting to ask questions. There was a pause. Then Megan's voice, cold and calculating. Susie will do what she always does, whatever I tell her to do. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding. Susie Reyes, Dominic's wife, Megan's best friend since college. Sweet, trusting Susie, who probably had no idea her husband was planning to leave her for her best friend. I made it back to the main party just as Richard appeared with my coat. You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost. Just tired, I managed. I think I'm going to head home. Where's Megan? She'll find her own way home. Richard studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Drive safe. I was halfway to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to find Nikki hurrying across the driveway, still in her witch costume but with the hat missing. Alex, wait. She pressed something into my hand, a small USB drive. You need to see what's on this. It'll answer your questions. What questions? The ones you should be asking. She glanced back at the house where the party was still going strong. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner, but I hoped I was wrong. About what? But she was already backing away. Watch the video, then decide what you want to do about it. I drove home in a daze, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket like a piece of radioactive material. Our house felt different when I walked in, colder, emptier, like a stage set for a play I didn't want to be in anymore. I sat at my computer for a long time before finally plugging in the drive. The video file was labeled Halloween Party Security Cam Bedroom. Richard and Nikki had security cameras throughout their house, a fact that apparently Megan and Dominic had forgotten in their rush to find somewhere private. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. I watched my wife of 12 years kiss another man with a passion I hadn't seen from her in years. Watched her tell him she loved him. Watched her promise to find a way to end our marriage without losing half our assets. But the real shock came at the end of the video when a third figure entered the frame. Susie Reyes stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her husband with her best friend. And then, instead of the anger or heartbreak I expected, she smiled. A cold, calculating smile that looked disturbingly familiar. She pulled out her phone and started recording. The video ended there, but I sat staring at the blank screen for another hour, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place in my mind. Susie's strange behavior at the party, the way she'd seemed almost eager when Megan brought up Dominic, the text that had led me to Megan's phone. My wife was cheating on me with her best friend's husband. Her best friend knew about it and was documenting it for reasons I couldn't fathom, and all three of them seemed to think I was too stupid or too weak to figure it out. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office making lists and plans with a methodical precision that had made me good at my job. Restaurant management taught you to think several steps ahead, to anticipate problems before they happened, and to have contingency plans for everything. By morning, I had a strategy. Megan came home around 10 a.m., looking like she'd spent the night at a spa instead of destroying our marriage. Her hair was perfect, her makeup fresh, and she moved with the satisfied confidence of someone who thought she'd gotten away with something. "Good party last night," she said, pouring herself coffee like nothing had happened. "Yeah, Richard always knows how to throw them." I kept my voice neutral, friendly even. "You seem to have a good time." "Dominic is hilarious. You should get to know him better." The audacity was breathtaking. She was literally suggesting I become friends with the man she was planning to leave me for. "Maybe I will," I said. "In fact, I was thinking of joining that gym you're always going to. Get back in shape." For just a moment, her composure slipped. "You? At the gym?" "Why not? You're always saying I should take better care of myself." She recovered quickly. "Of course. I think that's a great idea. I could introduce you to some people." "That's okay. I prefer to make my own first impressions." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Coffee at 2? The Starbucks on Maple. S. Susie." I showed Megan the message. "Susie wants to meet for coffee. Any idea what that's about?" Megan's face went carefully blank. "No idea. Maybe she wants to plan something for Dominic's birthday next month." Another lie. Dominic's birthday was in March. I'd been to enough of his parties over the years to remember. "I'll see what she wants," I said. The Starbucks on Maple was busy with the usual Sunday afternoon crowd, families with kids, college students with laptops, couples on dates. Susie was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a large coffee like she was trying to warm herself from the inside out. Susie Reyes was the kind of woman people described as cute, petite, blonde, with the sort of bubbly personality that made her popular at PTA meetings and neighborhood barbecues. She'd been Megan's best friend since college, the maid of honor at our wedding, and the godmother to our kids. If you'd asked me a week ago, I would have said she was one of the most genuinely nice people I knew. Looking at her now, I realized how little I actually knew about anyone. "Thanks for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "Your message made it sound important." She studied my face for a long moment. "You know, don't you?" There was no point in pretending. "About Megan and Dominic? Yeah, I know." Her shoulders sagged with what looked like relief. "How long have you known?" "Since last night? The question is, how long have you known?" 3 months. She took a shaky sip of her coffee. "I found texts on his phone. At first, I thought it was just some random woman from the gym. Then I saw them together at the grocery store, and the way they looked at each other." She trailed off, staring into her cup. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would you have believed me? Megan is your wife. She's been my best friend for 15 years. I kept thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was being paranoid." She looked up at me with eyes that were bright with unshed tears. "And then I started paying attention to the things she said about you. What kind of things? Cruel things. Things a wife shouldn't say about her husband, especially not to his friends. Susie reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She sent this to our group chat last week. She showed me a screenshot of a text conversation between Megan and what looked like 4 or 5 other women. The message that made my stomach clench was from Megan. Alex got another promotion at work. Still basically a glorified waiter, but now he gets to wear a tie while he disappoints people. At least he's consistent. The responses were a mix of laughing emojis and sympathetic comments, but what struck me was how casually cruel it was. This wasn't venting to a friend. This was public humiliation disguised as humor. There are more, Susie said quietly. Lots more. About your appearance, your personality, your performance in bed. She's been systematically destroying your reputation with everyone in our social circle for months. I handed her phone back, trying to process this information. Why are you showing me this? Because you deserve to know, and because... She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Because they are planning something, Alex. Something worse than just an affair. What do you mean? I overheard them talking last week. They're not just planning to have Dominic leave me and Megan leave you, they're planning to destroy you in the process. Make it look like you were abusive, controlling, maybe even violent. Megan's been documenting every argument you've had, taking photos of herself after she's been to the gym and claiming you caused the bruises. The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot, too crowded, too loud. That's insane. Is it? Think about it. If she can prove you were abusive, she gets everything in the divorce. The house, the savings, probably alimony. And Dominic gets to play the hero who saved her from her terrible husband. My hands were shaking now. I set down my coffee cup before I dropped it. Why are you telling me this? Megan is your best friend. Susie's expression hardened. Megan stopped being my friend the moment she decided to destroy 2 marriages for her own entertainment. And Dominic... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Dominic has been emotionally abusive for years. Not physically, but he has ways of making me feel small, worthless, like I should be grateful he puts up with me. I've been planning to leave him anyway. This just gives me the ammunition I need. So what do you want from me? I want them to pay for what they've done, to both of us. She leaned forward, and for the first time since I'd known her, Susie Reyes looked dangerous. I want revenge, Alex, and I think you do too. She was right. Sitting there in that crowded coffee shop, listening to the systematic way my wife had been destroying me behind my back, I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not just anger. I'd been angry before. This was something deeper, more focused. This was hatred. What did you have in mind? Susie smiled, and it wasn't her usual sweet, bubbly expression. This smile had teeth. I've been documenting everything. Photos, videos, text messages, financial records. I know about the credit card Dominic opened to buy her gifts. I know about the hotel rooms. I know about the lies they've both told their employers about sick days and family emergencies. I have enough evidence to destroy both of them professionally and personally. And you want to share this evidence with me? I want to coordinate with you. They're planning to destroy us both. Why shouldn't we return the favor? I thought about Megan's casual cruelty, her systematic campaign to humiliate me in front of our friends. I thought about Dominic's smug confidence, the way he'd looked at my wife like she was already his. I thought about the fake domestic abuse allegations they were planning, the way they intended to paint me as a monster to cover their own betrayal. What's the first step? Susie's smile widened. We give them exactly what they think they want. We let them think their plan is working, and then, when they least expect it, we pull the rug out from under them. She slid a flash drive across the table. Everything I have is on there. Photos, videos, financial records, text messages. Study it. Learn their patterns, their weaknesses, their lies. And then we make our move. When? Soon. Megan's planning some kind of influencer event at the gym next weekend. Big crowd, lots of social media coverage. She wants to announce her fitness transformation journey and introduce her amazing trainer to her followers. Dominic. Exactly. She's going to use the event to go public with their relationship, probably with some story about how she found love after escaping her terrible marriage. The pieces were falling into place. So we make sure the real story comes out instead. Now you're getting it. Susie stood up, leaving money on the table for her coffee. One more thing, Alex. After this is over, after we've destroyed them the way they plan to destroy us, we're done. I'm leaving town, starting over somewhere else. This isn't the beginning of a friendship. This is a business arrangement. Understood. She paused at the edge of the table. You might want to get a lawyer, a good one. When this is over, you're going to need help cleaning up the mess. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, scrolling through the files on the flash drive. The evidence was overwhelming. Photos of Megan and Dominic together in compromising situations, screenshots of their text conversations planning my destruction, financial records showing money spent on hotel rooms and gifts. But the worst part was the video files. Susie had been busy with her phone camera, documenting their affair in detail. Not just the physical betrayal, but the emotional cruelty. Recording conversations where they mocked me, where they planned ways to make me look unstable, where they laughed about how easy it would be to manipulate the divorce proceedings in Megan's favor. In one video, taken in what looked like Dominic's truck, Megan was explaining her strategy. The key is to make him seem controlling and paranoid. I've already started telling people he checks my phone, that he gets jealous when I talk to other men. When I file for divorce, everyone will believe he was abusive. Dominic's voice came from behind the camera. What if he fights back? Alex, please. He doesn't have the spine for a real fight. He'll roll over and take whatever I give him, just like he always does. They were both laughing as the video ended. I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair, feeling that cold hatred crystallize into something sharp and purposeful. They thought I was weak. They thought I was stupid. They thought I would roll over and let them destroy me. They were about to learn how wrong they were. But first, I had a performance to give. For the next week, I needed to be the perfect, unsuspecting husband. Loving, trusting, maybe even a little pathetic. I needed to let them think their plan was working, that I suspected nothing. I needed to let them get comfortable, confident, careless. And then I would show them what cold practice really looked like. The next week was the hardest acting job of my life. Every morning, I kissed Megan goodbye and wished her luck at the gym. Every evening, I asked about her day and listened to her lies with apparent interest. When she mentioned Dominic, I nodded and smiled like he was just another acquaintance instead of the man planning to steal my life. You seem different lately, she said Thursday night over dinner. More relaxed. Do I? I kept my tone casual, cutting into my steak with deliberate precision. Maybe it's because I've been thinking about what you said, about making changes. What kind of changes? Well, I applied for that regional manager position in Columbus, the one that would mean traveling more, being away from home. This was a lie, but I delivered it with the right mix of hope and uncertainty. Megan's eyes lit up in a way that confirmed everything Susie had told me. That's wonderful, honey. I think a change of scenery would be good for you. For us, she meant. It would be easier to paint me as an absent, neglectful husband if I was actually absent. Easier to explain why she'd turned to someone else for comfort and support. Of course, it would mean less time together, I continued, watching her face carefully. I'm sure we'll manage, she said, and the relief in her voice was unmistakable. That night, after she'd gone to bed, I sat in my office reviewing Susie's files and planning my next moves. The influencer event was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at Elite Fitness, the upscale gym where Megan had been spending most of her time. According to the promotional materials she'd shown me, it was going to be a wellness and transformation workshop featuring inspiring success stories and expert fitness guidance. What it really was, based on the text messages I'd seen, was Megan's coming out party. She planned to introduce Dominic as her trainer and inspiration, probably with some carefully crafted story about how he'd helped her discover her true potential. The subtext would be clear to everyone who knew us. She'd found a real man to replace her inadequate husband. It was going to be a beautiful disaster. Friday evening, Megan spent hours getting ready for what she claimed was a girls' night out. With some friends from the gym, I helped her pick out an outfit, a black dress that was conservative enough to seem respectable but fitted enough to show off the body she'd been sculpting for her new life. You look amazing, I told her, and meant it. Whatever else Megan was, she was still beautiful. It was one of the things that made her betrayal sting so much. Thank you. She kissed my cheek, and for a moment I caught a whiff of the perfume she used to wear for me. Don't wait up. After she left, I drove to a coffee shop across the street from Elite Fitness and waited. Sure enough, around 9 p.m., I saw Dominic's truck pull into the parking lot. Megan's BMW was already there. I didn't need to follow them to know what they were doing. Instead, I drove to their neighborhood and parked where I could see both their houses. Susie's car was in her driveway, but the lights were off. Dominic's house was dark too, which made sense since he was busy with my wife. My phone buzzed with a text from Susie. They're at the Marriott downtown. Room 237? Do you want photos? I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, No, save your energy for tomorrow. You sure you're ready for this? More than ready. The next morning, Megan was up early, buzzing with nervous energy. She changed outfits 3 times, redid her makeup twice, and spent an hour arranging products and props for her presentation. "I'm really nervous," she admitted, as I helped her load everything into her car. "You'll be great," I assured her. "Just be yourself." If she caught the irony in that statement, she didn't show it. The event was scheduled to start at 2 p.m. I arrived at Elite Fitness at 1:30, dressed in jeans and a polo shirt like any other supportive husband coming to watch his wife's big moment. The gym had been transformed for the occasion, with a small stage set up in the main workout area and chairs arranged in neat rows for the audience. I recognized most of the faces: Megan's social media followers, other gym members, a few local bloggers and influencers. Maybe 50 people total, which was respectable for this kind of event. Megan was in her element, working the crowd with practiced ease. She'd always been good at this kind of performance, making everyone feel like they were her personal friend while subtly promoting whatever she was selling. Today, she was selling a story of transformation and empowerment, with herself as the inspiring protagonist. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out today," she began, taking the microphone with confident hands. 6 months ago, I was stuck in a rut. I was going through the motions of my life, but I wasn't really living. I felt trapped, unappreciated, like I was settling for less than I deserved. The audience murmured sympathetically. Several people glanced in my direction with expressions that ranged from pity to barely concealed judgment. Megan had been setting this up for weeks, apparently, priming them to see me as the obstacle she'd had to overcome. "But then I met someone who changed everything," she continued, her voice taking on a dreamy quality that made my stomach turn. "Someone who saw my potential and helped me unlock it. Someone who believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself." This was my cue. I pulled out my phone and opened the app I'd spent the morning setting up, a direct connection to the gym's wireless presentation system. It had taken some creative social engineering with the IT guy who'd installed their equipment, but I'd convinced him I was helping Megan with a surprise video montage for her presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Megan said, gesturing toward the side of the stage, "I'd like you to meet my trainer, my inspiration, and my—" "Your married lover?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room went dead silent. Megan froze with her arms still extended, her mouth open in shock. Dominic, who'd been waiting in the wings, stepped onto the stage with a confused expression. "What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded. "Supporting my wife," I said, standing up so everyone could see me. Although I have to admit, I'm curious about how she was planning to finish that sentence. "Your trainer..."
Smile, because this is the last good day of your life.
Cute. Remember that night? Your office party?
Daniel, take Sarah home. Something urgent came up.
I'm pregnant. Who do you think the father is?
"Your inspiration and your what, Megan?" "Alex, please," she said, her voice shaking. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Am I?" "Because I think the embarrassment is just getting started." I tapped my phone screen, and the large monitor behind the stage came to life. The first image was a screenshot of Megan and Dominic's text conversation, blown up large enough for everyone in the room to read clearly. "Can't wait to feel you inside me again," appeared in Megan's distinctive purple text bubble, followed by Dominic's response. "Your husband doesn't deserve you. I'm going to make you forget he ever existed." The audience gasped. Several people started taking photos with their phones, which was exactly what I'd been hoping for. In the social media age, public humiliation was a spectator sport. "Alex, stop this right now," Megan hissed, but her voice was already lost in the growing murmur of shocked conversation. The next image was a photo of them kissing in the gym parking lot, taken with a telephoto lens. Then another of them entering the Marriott Hotel together. Then screenshots of their financial records showing the credit card charges for hotel rooms and expensive gifts. "This is illegal," Dominic shouted, pointing at me with a shaking finger. "You can't just..." Actually, I can, I interrupted. Everything you're seeing is either taken in public places or provided to me by concerned parties. Nothing illegal about it. The final image was the most damaging, a screenshot of their conversation planning to frame me for domestic abuse. Megan's words appeared on the screen in stark black and white. The key is to make him seem controlling and paranoid. When I file for divorce, everyone will believe he was abusive. The room erupted. People were shouting questions, taking videos, posting to social media in real time. Megan looked like she was going to be sick, and Dominic had gone pale under his gym tan. "You son of a bitch," he snarled, jumping down from the stage and stalking toward me. This was the moment I'd been preparing for. Dominic was bigger than me, stronger than me, and definitely more experienced in physical confrontations. But he was also angry, which made him predictable, and he was performing for an audience, which made him reckless. "Problem, Dom?" I asked, using the nickname I knew he hated. He swung at me with a wide right hook that would have been devastating if it had connected, but I'd been expecting it, and I stepped inside his reach, letting his momentum carry him past me. He stumbled, off balance, and I helped him along with a firm push that sent him crashing into a rack of dumbbells. The sound of metal hitting the floor was almost as loud as the audience's collective gasp. "Jesus, Dominic," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I know you're upset about getting caught, but there's no need for violence." He scrambled to his feet, his face red with rage and embarrassment. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think this changes anything?" "Actually, I think it changes everything." I gestured toward the crowd, many of whom were still recording. "See, the thing about public humiliation is that it's really hard to undo. By tonight, this is going to be all over social media. By tomorrow, it'll be everywhere." Megan had recovered enough to try damage control. "Everyone, please," she said, her voice cracking. "This is all a misunderstanding. Alex he's been having some problems lately. Mental health issues. He's not thinking clearly." It was exactly the kind of gaslighting I'd expected, but I was ready for it. "Mental health issues?" I repeated. "That's interesting, because I have recordings of you and Dominic discussing how to fake exactly those kinds of claims." I held up my phone. "Would you like me to play them for everyone?" Her face crumpled. For the first time since I'd known her, Megan looked genuinely defeated. "Please," she whispered. "Don't do this." "Do what? Tell the truth? Show people who you really are?" I shook my head. "You had months to think about what this would do to me, to our marriage, to our friends. You planned every detail of how to destroy my reputation and steal my life. And now you want mercy?" "Alex, I told you I was practicing being cold," I said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "This is what I was practicing for." The crowd was thinning out now, people leaving to spread the gossip or simply to escape the uncomfortable scene. But enough remained to ensure the story would spread, and the videos people had taken would do the rest. Dominic made one last attempt at salvaging his dignity. "This isn't over," he said, pointing at me with a shaking finger. "Yeah, it is," I replied. "It's been over since the moment you decided to betray your wife with mine. You just didn't know it yet." As I walked out of the gym, I could hear Megan crying and Dominic trying to explain to the remaining audience members that they'd been tricked, that I was the real villain in this story. But the evidence spoke for itself, and in the court of public opinion, evidence trumped explanations every time. My phone was buzzing with text messages, some from friends who'd seen the videos online, others from people I barely knew who'd heard about the drama. The story was already spreading beyond the gym, rippling out through social media and local gossip networks. But this was just the opening move. The real game was about to begin. By Sunday morning, the videos from Megan's disastrous influencer event had gone viral in our local social media ecosystem. The hashtag #ShockedHerColdPractice was trending on the community Facebook groups, and someone had even created a TikTok remix using the audio of me saying I was practicing being cold, over dramatic music. Megan hadn't come home Saturday night. I'd found a text on my phone around midnight. "Staying at Mom's. We need to talk when you're ready to be reasonable." Reasonable, as if there was a reasonable response to discovering your spouse had been planning to destroy your life for months. I was drinking my coffee and scrolling through the social media aftermath when my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Susie Reyes standing on my porch, holding what looked like a manila envelope. "How are you holding up?" she asked when I opened the door. "Better than expected. Coffee?" She nodded, and I led her to the kitchen. In the bright morning light, she looked tired but satisfied, like someone who'd finally gotten a good night's sleep after months of insomnia. "I saw the videos," she said, accepting a mug from me. "Nicely done." "That was just the appetizer. What's in the envelope?" She smiled, that same predatory expression I'd seen at the coffee shop. "Divorce papers. I filed Friday afternoon, right before your wife's little presentation. Dominic was served this morning. How did he take it? About as well as you'd expect. Lots of shouting about how I was a vindictive bitch, how he'd fight me for everything, how I'd regret crossing him. She sipped her coffee calmly. Then I showed him what else I'd been documenting. Such as? His cocaine habit, for starters. Amazing how careless people get when they think their spouse is too stupid to notice. I have photos of his stash, videos of him using, bank records showing payments to his dealer. I whistled softly. That'll complicate his custody case. Among other things, I also have evidence of him stealing from his employer, skimming overtime hours, falsifying safety reports, selling company equipment on the side. His boss is going to be very interested in that information. You've been busy. I've had 3 months to prepare. Unlike some people, I don't believe in half measures. She set down her coffee and looked at me seriously. What about you? What's your next move? I'd been thinking about that question all night. The public humiliation had been satisfying, but it was only the beginning. Megan and Dominic had planned to systematically destroy my reputation and steal my assets. They deserved worse than a viral video and some social media mockery. I'm going to give them exactly what they tried to give me, I said. Complete destruction. Financial? That's part of it. But I want more than that. I want them to understand what it feels like to have everyone you trust turn against you. I want them to experience the same isolation and betrayal they planned for me. Susie nodded approvingly. I can help with that. I've been documenting their relationship for months, but I've also been documenting their lies to friends and family. Megan told her mother you were having an affair with your assistant. She told your sister you'd been stealing money from the restaurant. She told the neighbors you'd been threatening her. My jaw clenched. She what? Systematic reputation destruction, just like you suspected. She's been laying the groundwork for months, making sure everyone would believe her version of events when she finally made her move. Do you have proof of these lies? Recordings, text messages, emails. She was very thorough in her documentation, but she made one crucial mistake. Which was? She documented everything on devices and accounts that I had access to. Shared family plans, cloud storage accounts, social media passwords. When you are planning to betray someone, you should probably change your passwords first. I had to laugh at that. For all their scheming, Megan and Dominic had been remarkably sloppy about operational security. So, what do you suggest? A coordinated campaign. We don't just expose the affair, we expose everything. The lies, the theft, the planned false accusations, the systematic betrayal of everyone who trusted them. We make it impossible for them to spin this as a simple case of two people falling in love. How? She pulled out her phone and showed me a carefully organized folder structure. I've been preparing for this conversation. Look. The folders were labeled with names. Megan's family, my family, our mutual friends, neighbors, co-workers, gym acquaintances. Each folder contained evidence of specific lies Megan had told about me, documented with screenshots, recordings, and witness statements. This is incredible, I said, scrolling through the files. How did you gather all this? Megan trusted me. She told me everything, thinking I'd be sympathetic to her difficult situation. She even asked me to back up some of her stories about your behavior. Did you? Of course. I played the supportive best friend right up until yesterday. But I was recording every conversation, saving every message, documenting every lie she asked me to tell. I looked up from her phone, seeing Susie clearly for perhaps the first time. She wasn't the sweet, naive woman I'd thought I knew. She was something much more dangerous. A patient, methodical person who'd been planning her revenge for months while maintaining a perfect facade of loyalty and friendship. You scare me a little, I admitted. Good. I should. Megan and Dominic have no idea what they're up against. We spent the next 2 hours going through her evidence and planning our campaign. It was like preparing for a military operation, identifying targets, coordinating timing, anticipating responses, and counter-moves. The beauty of Susie's approach was its comprehensiveness. Instead of just exposing the affair, we were going to systematically disprove every lie Megan had told about me while simultaneously revealing the depth of her deception. By the time we were finished, it would be impossible for anyone to see her as the wronged party in this situation. When do we start? I asked. We already have. The divorce papers I filed yesterday include a detailed accounting of Dominic's assets and debts, including the money he spent on hotels and gifts for your wife. His lawyer is going to have a very interesting conversation with him about that. And Megan? I suggest you file for divorce tomorrow, but not just any divorce, a fault-based divorce citing adultery and emotional abuse. With the evidence we have, her lawyer won't be able to argue for a no-fault settlement. What about the false domestic abuse allegations she was planning? That's where things get interesting. Making false accusations of domestic violence is a crime in Ohio. If we can prove she was planning to file false police reports, and we can, she could face criminal charges. I felt that cold satisfaction settling in my chest again. You really have thought of everything. I've had a lot of time to think, and a lot of motivation. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. We need to talk. Can you meet me at the house at 2? I showed the message to Susie, who smiled. Perfect timing. Are you ready for the performance of your life? What do you mean? She's going to try to control the narrative, probably claim that you violated her privacy, that you're obsessed and unstable, that she only turned to Dominic because you were neglecting her. She might even try to flip the script and claim you were the one planning to leave her. So what do? You listen, you record everything, and you let her hang herself with her own words. At exactly 2 p.m., Megan's BMW pulled into our driveway. I watched from the window as she sat in the car for several minutes, apparently gathering her courage or rehearsing her lines. When she finally got out, she moved with the careful precision of someone who knew they were walking into a minefield. I opened the door before she could knock. Alex. She looked terrible. Red eyes, pale skin, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Thank you for agreeing to see me. Of course. You're still my wife. We sat in the living room, on opposite ends of the couch that had once been our favorite place to watch movies together. The distance between us felt like a canyon. I know you're angry, she began, her voice carefully modulated, and you have every right to be. But what you did yesterday was what? Cruel, public, designed to humiliate me. I let the irony of that statement hang in the air for a moment. As opposed to your plan, which was private and kind? Her composure slipped slightly. I never wanted to hurt you, Alex. Things just happened. Dominic and we didn't plan for this to... Stop. I held up a hand. Just stop. I've seen the text messages, Megan. I've seen the videos. I know about the false domestic abuse allegations you were planning. I know about the lies you've been telling our friends and family for months. So please don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was some kind of accidental romance. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her recalibrating her approach. Fine, she said, her voice hardening. You want the truth? Here it is. I haven't been happy in this marriage for years. You're boring, Alex. You're predictable. You have no ambition, no passion, no drive to be anything more than what you are. Do you know how soul-crushing it is to be married to someone who's completely satisfied with mediocrity? So you decided to destroy me instead of just leaving me. I decided to protect myself. Do you think I wanted to spend the rest of my life paying alimony to a man who never appreciated what he had? Do you think I wanted to give up half of everything I'd worked for just because you couldn't satisfy me emotionally or physically? There it was. The real Megan. Oh, without the mask of false sweetness and manufactured victimhood. This was the woman who'd spent months systematically destroying my reputation while planning to steal my assets and frame me for crimes I'd never committed. So, the domestic abuse allegations? Would have been justified. Maybe not physically, but emotional abuse is still abuse. The way you ignored me, dismissed my dreams, made me feel trapped and unappreciated, that's abuse, Alex. I had to admire the twisted logic of it. In her mind, she was the victim, and everything she'd done was justified self-defense against a husband who'd failed to meet her needs. What about Dominic's wife? What about Susie? For the first time, genuine emotion flickered across her face. Susie will be fine. She's stronger than she looks, and honestly, she'll be better off without Dominic. He's been holding her back for years. How generous of you to make that decision for her. Look, I know you think I'm the villain here, but I'm not. I'm just a woman who fell in love with someone who actually sees her value, someone who appreciates her ambition and supports her dreams instead of just tolerating them. And if that meant destroying 2 marriages and framing me for domestic violence, well, that was just the cost of doing business. She met my eyes without flinching. Yes. The simple honesty of it was almost refreshing. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more gaslighting. Just pure, selfish calculation. Well, I said, standing up, I appreciate your honesty. It makes what comes next a lot easier. What comes next? Divorce proceedings. Criminal charges for planning to file false police reports. Civil suits for defamation based on the lies you've been spreading about me. Complete financial discovery to account for every dollar you and Dominic spent on your affair. Her face went white. You can't prove... I can prove everything, Megan. Every lie, every betrayal, every crime you were planning to commit. And unlike you, I'm not going to settle for half measures. I walked to the door and held it open. "I think it's time for you to leave." She stood up slowly, her composure finally cracking completely. "Alex, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, we can—" "Why are you so desperate now?" I asked, echoing her words from that morning in the kitchen that had started all of this. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face, and I felt absolutely nothing. No pity, no regret, no lingering love for the woman I'd once planned to spend my life with. "I was practicing being cold," I said, as she walked past me toward the door. "And apparently, I'm a very good student." After she left, I sat in my living room for a long time, thinking about the conversation I'd just recorded and the evidence it would provide in the legal proceedings to come. But mostly, I thought about how quiet the house felt without her constant criticism and casual cruelty. For the first time in years, the silence felt peaceful instead of tense. My phone buzzed with a text from Susie. "How did it go?" "Better than expected," I typed back. She confessed to everything. "Perfect. Phase 2 starts tomorrow." "What's Phase 2? We let everyone know what she really said about them behind their backs, starting with her mother. I smiled, feeling that cold satisfaction spread through my chest like ice water in my veins. Megan thought she understood the consequences of her actions, but she had no idea what was coming. The real cold practice was just beginning. Monday morning brought the kind of crisp October weather that made everything feel sharp and clear. I woke up in my empty house, made coffee in my quiet kitchen, and prepared for what I knew would be the most satisfying day of my life. Susie had worked through the weekend, systematically contacting everyone on our list with evidence of Megan's lies and betrayals. The response had been swift and brutal. Megan's mother had called her at 6 a.m., screaming about the lies Megan had told about me. Her sister had sent a blistering text message. 3 of her closest friends had blocked her on social media after seeing proof of what she'd really said about them in private. But the real masterpiece was what Susie had done to Dominic. I sent his cocaine photos to his boss, his ex-wife, and his probation officer. She told me over breakfast at a diner downtown. Turns out he never mentioned that DUI from 2 years ago when he applied for his current job. Amazing what you can find in public records when you know where to look. Probation officer? Court-ordered drug counseling from the DUI. He was supposed to be clean for 2 years. The photos I have are time-stamped from last month. I whistled softly. That's going to be more than just a job problem. Exactly. He's looking at serious legal consequences, not just social embarrassment. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost declined it, but something made me answer. "Alex Warren?" "Speaking." "This is Detective Sarah Martinez with Cleveland PD. I understand you've been having some domestic issues with your wife?" My blood went cold. "What kind of domestic issues?" "We received a report this morning alleging that you've been threatening your wife, that you destroyed her property, and that she's afraid for her safety. We'd like to speak with you about these allegations." I looked at Susie, who had gone pale. This was exactly what we'd been expecting, but it was still a shock to hear it actually happening. "Detective, I'd be happy to speak with you, but I think there are some things you should know about the person making these allegations." "Such as?" "Such as the fact that she's been planning to make false domestic abuse allegations for months as part of a scheme to defraud me in divorce proceedings. I have recordings of her discussing this plan in detail." There was a pause. "You have recordings?" "I have extensive documentation of a conspiracy to commit fraud, file false police reports, and defame me publicly. I've been working with an attorney to prepare a comprehensive response to exactly these kinds of allegations." Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Warren, I think we need to meet in person. Can you come to the station this afternoon?" "Of course. Should I bring my attorney?" "That would be advisable." After I hung up, Susie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "This is it," she said. "This is what we've been preparing for." "Are you sure the evidence will hold up?" "Alex, we have her on video discussing plans to file false police reports. We have text messages detailing exactly how she planned to manipulate the system. We have financial records showing she's been systematically preparing for a fraudulent divorce. Any competent detective is going to see through her lies in about 5 minutes." She was right, but my hands were still shaking as I called my attorney. The lawyer I'd hired, Rebecca Chen, recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a nasty divorce, was exactly the kind of sharp, no-nonsense professional I needed for this situation. "They move faster than I expected," she said when I explained the situation. "But we're ready for this. Bring all the evidence files to my office, and we'll go to the police station together." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a sterile interview room at the Cleveland Police Department, watching Detective Martinez review the evidence that would destroy my wife's credibility forever. "This is extensive," she said, scrolling through the files on her laptop. You've been documenting this for how long? The affair? About a week. But the systematic campaign of lies and planned false allegations? That goes back months. She clicked on one of the audio files, a recording of Megan explaining to Dominic how she planned to manipulate the police and court system. The key is to make him seem controlling and paranoid. Megan's voice filled the small room. I've already started telling people he checks my phone, that he gets jealous when I talk to other men. When I file the police report, everyone will believe he was abusive. Detective Martinez stopped the recording and looked at me with something like sympathy. Mr. Warren, I have to ask, did you ever threaten your wife or damage her property? Never. The only property damage was what I did to her lover's truck, and that was after I discovered their affair. And the threats she's alleging? Complete fabrication. But I have recordings of her admitting that she was planning to make false allegations. The detective nodded and made some notes. What about the allegations against Mr. Reyes? Your wife claims you've been harassing him as well. Rebecca, my attorney, leaned forward. Detective, we have evidence that Mr. Reyes has been involved in this conspiracy from the beginning. He's not a victim, he's a co-conspirator. What kind of evidence? Text messages discussing the plan to frame my client, financial records showing money spent on the affair, and... Rebecca paused for effect. Evidence that Mr. Reyes has been using illegal drugs in violation of his probation terms. Detective Martinez's eyebrows went up. He's on probation? Court-ordered drug counseling from a DUI conviction. We have photographic evidence of recent cocaine use. The detective was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, she closed her laptop and looked at me directly. Mr. Warren, based on what I've seen here, I don't think you're going to be charged with anything. In fact, I think your wife and Mr. Reyes are going to have some very serious questions to answer. What happens now? Now we investigate them. Filing false police reports is a felony in Ohio. Conspiracy to commit fraud is a felony. If we can prove they were planning to manipulate the legal system for financial gain... She shrugged. They're looking at serious criminal charges. As we left the police station, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine happiness. Not just satisfaction or vindication, but actual joy at the thought of a future free from Megan's manipulation and cruelty. How long before they arrest them? I asked Rebecca as we walked to our cars. Probably within the week. The evidence is overwhelming, and the police don't like being used as weapons in domestic disputes. That evening, I was home alone, enjoying the peace and quiet of my Megan-free house, when my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Dominic Reyes standing on my porch, and he did not look happy. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. What do you want, Dominic? You son of a bitch, he snarled. You think you can destroy my life and get away with it? I think you destroyed your own life when you decided to have an affair with my wife and planned to frame me for domestic abuse. That was all her idea. I had to laugh at that. Really? So you were just an innocent victim in all this? Look, man, I made mistakes, okay? But what you did to me at work, with my probation officer, that's going to ruin everything. Good. He pressed his face against the gap in the door, his eyes wild with desperation and rage. This isn't over. You think you're so smart, but I know people. I have connections. I can make your life hell. Dominic, I said calmly, I'm recording this conversation. You're currently on my property making threats after conspiring to file false police reports against me. How do you think that's going to play with your probation officer? His face went white as he realized what he'd just done. You can't. I can, and I am. Now get off my property before I call the police and have you arrested for harassment and violating the terms of your probation. He backed away from the door, but his expression remained murderous. This isn't over, he repeated. Yeah, it is, I replied. You just don't know it yet. After he left, I called Detective Martinez and sent her the recording of his threats. 20 minutes later, a patrol car was parked outside Dominic's house, and he was being arrested for violation of probation and criminal threatening. The next morning brought news that was almost too good to believe. Megan had been arrested at her mother's house on charges of filing false police reports and conspiracy to commit fraud. The local news had picked up the story, describing it as a case of social media influencer arrested for elaborate scheme to frame husband for domestic abuse. But the real satisfaction came from watching the social media fallout. The same people who had been following Megan's transformation journey were now sharing screenshots of her mugshot and commenting on her fake life and narcissistic behavior. The hashtag #ShotsColdPractice was trending again, but now it was being used to describe her calculated cruelty rather than my response to it. Susie called me that afternoon with an update on her own situation. Dominic's lawyer called this morning, she said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. They want to settle the divorce quickly and quietly. No custody fight, no alimony dispute, no arguments about asset division. Apparently, facing federal drug charges makes you very eager to cooperate. Federal charges? It turns out his cocaine dealer was part of a larger operation the DEA has been investigating. When they arrested Dominic, he rolled over immediately and gave them everything he knew. He's looking at serious prison time unless he cooperates fully. And Megan? Her lawyer is trying to work out a plea deal, but the prosecutor isn't interested. Apparently, they're tired of people using the legal system to settle personal vendettas, and they want to make an example. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a courtroom watching my wife of 12 years plead guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and filing false police reports. She looked small and defeated in her orange jumpsuit, nothing like the confident, cruel woman who had systematically tried to destroy my life. The judge was not sympathetic. "Mrs. Warren," he said, looking down at her with obvious disgust, "you have attempted to weaponize our legal system for personal gain. You have made false allegations that trivialize the real experiences of domestic abuse victims. You have wasted police resources and court time with your elaborate deception." Megan kept her head down, saying nothing. "I sentence you to 18 months in prison, followed by 2 years of probation. You will also pay full restitution to your husband for legal fees and damages, and you will perform 500 hours of community service working with actual domestic abuse victims so you can understand the harm your lies have caused." As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. I expected to see hatred in her eyes, or anger, or even regret. Instead, I saw nothing, just emptiness, like she'd finally run out of lies to tell and manipulations to attempt. Dominic got 3 years in federal prison for drug trafficking, plus another year in state prison for the false police report conspiracy. His ex-wife Susie got everything in the divorce: the house, the cars, his pension, even his collection of vintage guitars that he'd treasured more than his marriage. "What are you going to do now?" I asked her as we left the courthouse after the final hearing. "Exactly what I told you I'd do," she replied. "I'm leaving town, starting over somewhere else. Maybe Colorado. I've always wanted to see the mountains." "Any regrets?" She considered the question for a moment. "About destroying them. None. About trusting them in the first place? Every day." 6 months later, I was sitting in my quiet house, reading a book and enjoying a glass of wine, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know what you did. I know how you destroyed my daughter's life. This isn't over." I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it. Megan's mother had been sending me threatening messages for months, apparently unable to accept that her daughter was a criminal who had brought her own destruction upon herself. Some people, I'd learned, would rather blame everyone else than accept the truth about the people they loved. But I wasn't worried about Megan's mother, or her remaining friends, or anyone else who wanted to paint me as the villain in this story. I had something they didn't have: the truth, documented and proven in a court of law. I had won, completely and utterly. My wife and her lover were in prison. My reputation was restored. My assets were protected. My future was my own again. I had practiced being cold, and I had learned the lesson perfectly. The only sound in my house was the quiet tick of the clock on the mantel, marking time in a life that was finally, peacefully mine again.